Could Jared Jones cement himself in the National League Rookie of the Year conversation?
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to that podcast, everybody. This is the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show, now in my fourth season covering the Pittsburgh Pirates. You can follow me right there on social media at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use FanDuel.com/LockedOn, and I'll tell you why to use it a little bit later. Pirates dropped another yesterday after leading against the New York Mets. I feel like a lot of us, including myself, share the same sentiment right now that we just want to get out of New York if we're Pirates fans and the players. It just has not been a good series at all. Just genuinely, it has not been a series that any of us really want to remember. Obviously, a lot of crazy things happened yesterday. We'll get into those in the final segment of today's episode today, but I wanted to start with something positive from yesterday's game to begin today's show, and that's Jared Jones. Jared Jones, folks, has been an absolute revelation to start this season for the Pittsburgh Pirates. A lot of us didn't know if he was even going to break the team out of camp. We didn't know what the plan was really with Jared Jones and what was going to be happening with when he was going to debut. I was a big component throughout the offseason of telling all of you that he was going to debut before Paul Skeens, and he obviously did, breaking the Major League roster out of camp. And folks, he has been nothing short of brilliant since he began his Pirates career through these first four starts. Obviously, striking guys out at an amazing clip, at a historic clip, really, for not only the Pirates, but MLB history. And you folks know that I absolutely love StatCast, and I will usually use StatCast to say, okay, if this player's not playing all that great, well, there has to be something he's doing right that's eventually going to pull it around. If this player's not, or if this player is playing great, there may be something that says, yeah, maybe it's a little bit of luck in there. Jared Jones is the oddball out here, where he is just playing phenomenal baseball on the mound and also just doing phenomenal things in advanced metrics. Right now, he's at a +3 pitching run value. That fastball that we love to just drool over is at a +2 fastball run value. His breaking stuff, which would be his slider, is in the 94th percentile right now at a 3 breaking run value. The off speed, he doesn't use it all that much, so I don't really worry about it all that much. His expected ERA, which is one that I like to look at a lot for pitchers, because a lot of times you could have things like yesterday with Brian Reynolds missing that diving catch that on that Pete Alonso double. You could have things like that can usually inflate your ERA, considering they are still considered hits. But for Jared Jones, his expected ERA is in the 79th percentile in all of baseball at a 2.74. His expected batting average, 70th percentile at 215. Fastball velo, we already know it's going to be up there. It averages out at about 97.1. But where things get very fun for Jared Jones and what he's done so far are the chase rates, the whiff rates, the K rates, and the walk rates. He ranks in the 94th percentile or higher in all of Major League Baseball in all of those metrics. 98th percentile in chase rate at 41.2. 39% whiff rate, which is a 97th percentile. His strikeout rate is 36.4 to 94th, and his walk rate is 2.3. So he's missing bats. He is striking guys out at a historic clip. He's not allowing guys to get on base via the free pass whatsoever. And you look at his distribution of his pitches, and they actually talked about this yesterday on the broadcast shortly, that 47% of the time you're going to see the fastball from Jared Jones. Now, you would think, okay, maybe that fastball will eventually start getting beat up, but it hasn't so far. And he's just throwing it right at opposing hitters. He does not care He wants to place it where he wants to place it, and odds are it's going to be in the strike zone. He then pairs it with a pitch that I told you guys was going to be a phenomenal pitch for him right out of the gate, and that's the slider. Then you look at the curveball and the changeup, which he uses a combined 12% of the time. But for that stuff, you really can marvel at the fact that he has been able to pick up so far in the middle of games when he has to adjust. And that is something for a 22-year-old pitcher that is absolutely awesome to see. Is, yeah, you might see him adjust from start to start usually with like some of these normal young pitchers, is you'll see them have that blow-up start but then adjust later on. Well, Jared Jones so far has adjusted in the middle of games. We saw him do it previously in the Philadelphia Phillies series against another strong lineup in the Philadelphia Phillies, where they were attacking him early, and he said, okay, I'm going to adjust to this, and he adjusted to it. And he's faced some pretty hefty lineups so far. Obviously, Miami's lineup, not all that crazy, but he's faced the Baltimore Orioles lineup that I got to see in person. He faced the Philadelphia Phillies lineup, and he's faced a strong New York Mets lineup that has the potential to put up runs. Now, it hasn't looked exactly world-beating in this series. It's more of the Pirates beating themselves at this point, I think. But it's still a lineup that features Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil, and Pete Alonso, who all can make impacts any given day. And Jared Jones has just went out there and made these batters look silly. He really just has. And the spin rates are all there. The stuff is there. Now, I am going to address the elephant in the room. It was frustrating to see Jared Jones get pulled out of that game early yesterday at just 59 pitches, where he also threw 50 strikes. But it was a predetermined pitch count that the team had already set well in advance for this game. And if you want Jared Jones to pitch all year, this is just going to be something that's going to happen. Is a lot of us recognized last year that Johan Oviedo could end up having issues with his arm and eventually his elbow because he was pitching well over his career pitch count. Jared Jones has never pitched over 120 innings at any professional level yet. So you got to give the kid time to adjust to the schedule. You have to give the kid time to really not throw his arm out. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's only 6 foot, maybe 6'1", throwing 97 miles per hour on average. We've seen Tommy John already wreck the likes of Spencer Strider and Yuri Perez. We've seen it already happen. Sandy Alcantara, too. Johan Oviedo in our own backyard. And Mike Burrows has already dealt with it. JT Brubaker, before he got traded, was dealing with it. And I think keeping Jared Jones healthy is important. Now, I also do think, obviously, winning games is of the most importance. But if it was already a predetermined pitch count or a predetermined amount of innings that he was going to go, as Derek Shelton and Jared Jones himself said to reporters last night, yeah, you can be frustrated with it, but also Jared Jones seems to also be okay with it and be aware of what's happening around baseball right now, and he wants to stay healthy. You can't fault him for that at all. And for a kid as talented as Jared Jones, and why his approach is working, he's not overthinking it. And that's what I think one of the biggest components to his start is this year, is he's just not overthinking things when he's on the mound. And he is a firecracker, man. When he's out there, he shows emotion, he shows moxie, he shows confidence. He just knows his stuff works, and he knows if he can get it to work, he's going to have success more often than not. And one of the big things he did yesterday, he only gave up one hit yesterday, and arguably shouldn't even have been a hit, because Brian Reynolds even probably would come out and tell you he should have made that play. But he eliminated the home run ball last night, which was massive for him. It's something he dealt with through his first 3 starts. But folks, there's no reason to say Jared Jones can't be fully involved in the NL Rookie of the Year conversation this year if he continues this kind of pace. Now, do I expect him to strike out 7 batters or more in every single start that he has this year? No. If he does that, you're having a completely different conversation about him winning the National League Cy Young now with Spencer Strider potentially on the shelf. Now, look, he could do it. He really could. It would take a lot for him to do it. But for what he's doing right now, he is doing more than enough for this rotation. And the rotation throughout what we've seen so far has actually been quite a strength for this team so far. It's been a spot where you look at and say, rotation's been pretty all right. It's been the bullpen over the last week and change that's had its issues, and it had its issues last night and the day before. But if the rotation, including Jared Jones especially, can continue to produce like this, that bullpen's going to come back around eventually. Again, it's a top unit in baseball. It's going to have its lumps. You're always going to have your lumps when it comes to bullpen arms and what they're dealing with. But with Jared Jones and him being the topic of conversation here, folks, I mean, let me know your thoughts. I just don't see how he's not involved in the NL Rookie of the Year conversation. I'm not saying he's going to win it. I'm just saying he could be involved. Obviously, you have Shoto Imanaga in Chicago, Yoshinobu Yamamoto in LA, and I'm sure you're going to have some other rookies really showcase their stuff throughout the year. But it's hard to make the argument that Jared Jones wouldn't at least be in the conversation and get a ton of votes if the season ended today. And I don't think he's showing any signs of slowing down either. And going back to what I said before, we're just going to have to get used to seeing the Pirates pull him early in games to keep him fresh, to keep him healthy, because it's a big deal around baseball right now that these pitchers are getting injured. And if the Pirates can keep Paul Skeens and Jared Jones healthy, and a lot of these other guys like Anthony Solometto and Bubba Chandler that we love to praise right now, then that is more important. Health to me and availability right now is more important than you getting 200 innings. That's how I view it at this current moment. And it's definitely a change for some people who watch baseball that are much older than me, where they were seeing guys throw 120, 130 pitches consistently. But also, I think health and availability is just more important. And if Jared Jones can be more important and more important to this team, healthy, than pitching 200 some innings and then having Tommy John and being out for a year, then folks, I'll take that every day of the week. But that's why I think Jared Jones should be in the NL Rookie of the Year conversation early. His approach is working. He's just looked phenomenal so far. What hasn't looked phenomenal is that the offense has gone quiet. What's up and how can they heat up again? We'll talk about that in just a moment. But before we do, we're going to talk about Prize Picks and Monopoly Go. Prize Picks is here for you to be the best daily fantasy sports app out there. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100, because Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. Get in on the playoff action in basketball and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. Prize Picks has something for every sports fan, from baseball and basketball to League of Legends and everything in between. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100, and pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. Download Monopoly Go free on the App Store and Google Play, because for Monopoly Go, we've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. And there's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties, and so much more. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. And folks, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. Before we get into more Pirates talk tonight, it's Locked On's NFL Mock Draft Live on April 17th at 7 Eastern Time, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 Eastern Time to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17th at 7 Eastern Time, streaming live on Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. And as far as the Pirates are concerned and what we've seen so far from this team, the offense has had its moments. The offense has shown that it can put up runs. It can put up runs at healthy clips, really. It can do a lot of good for this team. In this Mets series, though, through 18 innings, they have 4 runs and 8 hits. And they just have not been hitting the baseball exactly the same as we were accustomed to through that first week and change. They have a chance to change that today against the Mets. They'll be facing against Luis Severino. I'll talk about that later in the final segment of today's show. But the offense, and I talked about this at length yesterday, about the called third strikes and their approach at the plate and why it can have its positives, but it also has its major negatives. And we're now seeing the positives and we're seeing the negatives here. The positives of this are the pitch counts on the opposing team are always going to get drug up by this team. The Pirates are going to see a ton of pitches every single night. That's just how the offense works right now. The offense is working in a way that allows them to see a lot of pitches and gives them opportunities. On the flip side, you have to start swinging at strike 3 and getting better hitters counts. Pirates are one of the better teams in baseball in forcing walks. They're also one of the worst teams in baseball in striking out. So it's kind of a balance beam here with this offense. We know who the contributors night in and night out are usually going to be. You're going to see Brian Reynolds, O'Neal Cruz, and Ke'Bryan Hayes be contributors. But I think the biggest thing that the Pirates offense has to get back to that we haven't seen, especially really in this series against the Mets, and that's been amplified, is that you haven't really gotten those contributions out of the players that you would be hoping for. Connor Joe has continued to be a revelation. He's continued to hit the baseball well. I'd leave him in the lineup for longer than a day or two. Brian Reynolds is always going to do his thing. Jared Triolo has done fine. Edward Olivares has been a contributor. Michael A. Taylor, we've seen him come back down to earth after that hot start. O'Neal Cruz has had his struggles. We can very much document that. But I do think him not playing for almost a year is a major component to that. Alika Williams even has been a contributor. But what needs to happen outside of those top 3 that I mentioned, Hayes, Reynolds, and Cruz, you need some of these guys to start picking it up consistently. Andrew McCutchen, who had a slow start to the year, finally hits number 300, and now it looks like he's starting to pick it up a little bit. Edward Olivares had a hot start to the year, but yesterday 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. Jack Sawinski has not had a good start to the year at all, albeit his OPS is a 601, which is still not good, but his average is a 185. So the offense, which again, we've seen do phenomenal things. We've seen this offense already this year put up big numbers, but they have to do it consistently. You're getting great starts out of your starters right now. And this was another game where the Pirates had the lead going into the 7th inning or later. That 3-run 7th inning ended up just being enough for the Mets because the offense was just not there. And what I find interesting, and what I want to highlight a little bit here for everybody watching today, is we're having these conversations about the offense going quiet and the bullpen having its issues and the starting rotation doing good things right now. There's a lot of positives to talk about. There's a lot of negatives to talk about. But the Pirates are still an above 500 baseball team through 18 games thus far. They haven't been under 500 yet this year. And I hope that they never are. Now, are there chances that they are? Sure. If the bullpen keeps blowing games up and the offense just can't score runs, yeah, sure, it'll probably happen pretty quick. But I don't think that these things are going to stay around forever. Like, I don't think that the offense is just going to remain this quiet consistently. I do think that they have the horses to have a fun offense and have an offense that can go out there and score runs. I do think that the bullpen that I've praised all offseason and praised in the early part of the first couple weeks is going to be a unit that's eventually going to come back to form, and we're going to start seeing that Holderman, Chapman, Bednar trio really shut down games. These are all things that are fixable. It's not really anything to do with injuries or anything to do with stuff that the Pirates can't control. These are all issues that they can fix, and they're relatively easy fixes. If the offense can just get back to what they were doing, they're going to win games more often than not. And they still have yet to lose a game this year by more than 4 runs, I believe. The Phillies series, the Phillies game, they lost 5-1. Yeah. So that was their biggest loss of the year so far. They have not been really completely outmatched in any game that they've played this year. They've been in every single game that they've played. And folks, that is a good thing because more often than not, with this bullpen, and if the offense could come back to form, especially if they could just start swinging earlier in counts and get themselves back into hitters counts more often than not, then you're going to start seeing the wins roll back in. But we also kind of expected that things were going to slow down. And that's fine because they're still 11-7 and they have a chance to at least salvage one in New York today. I'm going to give some more Mets series thoughts and preview game 3 of the series. But before we do that, folks, we're going to talk about FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon should be your place for all of your sports betting this year because it's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. And you can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook and an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. And folks, welcome to the third and final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. Thank you, as always, for tuning into the show. As you always do, you guys are the best fans that a Pirates podcast host could ask for. The Mets series so far, just to talk about it, has not been the prettiest series in really any aspect at all. And I say that from an officiating standpoint. I say that from the Pirates standpoint and what they've done throughout this series. And what I find interesting is that they had the lead in both of these games. They were up 3-0 on Monday. They were up 1-0 yesterday. And late in the games, we saw that the blow-ups happened. And I saw a lot of people kind of reverting back on their takes on Derek Shelton, saying, oh my God, Derek Shelton, he's not going to be able to hit the right buttons 100% of the time. If he was able to hit the right buttons 100% of the time, the Pirates would win 120 games. But he can't. And where I want to see things move forward with this team, and something internally that I did ask myself about this Pirates team, is how would they respond when they finally started facing adversity? And we're seeing them face adversity. They split a series with the Tigers. They split a series with the Phillies. They've lost a series now to the Mets, and they'll look to salvage a game today. They haven't won a series in over a week and a half. They have not had that feeling that they had against Miami, Washington, and Baltimore. They just haven't had that feeling in over a week and a half. So how do they react to getting back into the win column as far as the series is concerned? I think that's one of my big questions that I had for this team is, yeah, it was great to have the start that they had, but I wanted to see how they face adversity, and they're facing it right now. And throughout this show today, we talked about Jared Jones. We talked about the offense. If the pitching staff can continue to give you good starts, the offense scoring runs is going to be just as important. And we've seen that in this series. Martin Perez had another phenomenal start on Monday. Didn't matter. Jared Jones had a good outing yesterday, albeit on a pitch count. Didn't matter. You have to make those starts matter because we deep down right now the starting group is a strength of this team at this current moment. But we don't know what's happening Friday. Marco Gonzalez is on the IL. We don't know what's going to happen Friday and who they're going to pitch. We don't know what's going to happen in that start. We don't know what's going to happen today when it comes to Bailey Falter. We just don't know these things. So the offense putting up runs can at least be somewhat of a security blanket for the starters who have pitched well. And why not reward them with a win? I know wins and losses don't really matter all that much anymore, but it would be nice for Jared Jones to get a W in some of these games that he's just flat out pitching out of his mind. And Bailey Falter will go today, who has had a pretty good run of things the last couple starts. He had a no-hitter going into 6 innings against a strong Baltimore Orioles offense about a week ago. And no face-off against Luis Severino, who hasn't exactly had the worst start to the year either. He's going to be formidable against this team, I think. We've seen them have their struggles against righties in 15 innings pitched, 17 strikeouts so far for him, a 3 ERA on the nose, a 1.4 whip. Severino's doing pretty much what he's done his whole career. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, I think winning this game is important. You get the off day tomorrow. You get to go back home for 7 games, which is huge. You obviously face the Red Sox and the Brewers coming back to PNC Park, which I think will be massive for them. But I think a win is even more massive. And what else is more massive is you hitting that like button, that subscribe button, and following this show everywhere that you can find it. Because thank you so much for tuning in every single day, especially on this beautiful Wednesday. Folks, my name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter and social media at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Again, for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on with your favorite baseball team, the Pittsburgh Pirates. You can find the show on YouTube and, of course, on all of your audio platforms every Monday through Friday, and it is free and available to you, so please tune in. Make sure you check out the Locked On 24/7 streaming channel over there at Locked On Sports Today. Folks, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Enjoy the afternoon baseball. I'll see you in tomorrow, but until then, see you on the flip side.